1. Darling husband, our child and I moved into his grandma's house while she was ill. Sadly, she passed several years ago, and her daughter, my mother-in-law, moved in. It has been 4 of us for a few years, and we have a decent routine, get along fine, and don't mind living with family since it's beneficial. Our house is big enough that we have separate living areas, and with work schedules, it's easy to not see each other for days at a time. About 10-ish months ago, she met a guy online, and after a month of them FaceTiming, he came to visit. Before him getting here, she and I both agreed I would do a background check for safety, but especially since our child is here. His record wasn't horrible, but he had what looked like an open charge for theft, and was already sentenced and scheduled to report to jail the same day he was expected to arrive here. Mother-in-law asked her boyfriend, and he says it's a mistake, and the charges were dropped. He even went to the courthouse and sent us a form that looks like it's a signed order to dismiss and expunge the charges, since he's finished with whatever requirements they had set. All seems okay, he arrives. Mother-in-law has chosen men over her own kids their whole lives, so darling husband joked that boyfriend would be staying once he got here. It wasn't a joke. This dude came down with all his things packed in his car, and on the day he was supposed to leave, he found a job, and they sat us down and say he was moving in. I personally was pissed. Nobody's happiness should come at the expense of my child's safety. Mother-in-law basically said if I had a problem, we could leave, although we pay 100% of the property taxes and 2/3 of the bills. We stayed and just set up cameras in our rooms. There haven't been any issues since he's been here, but we only small talk about weather and work. Darling husband and him were chatting about where boyfriend is from. My husband mentions going to stay at this cabin. Boyfriend says no, they don't want me back there. That was a red flag in my brain, since we were all told that's where he was living before coming here, and under the impression he was coming here for mother-in-law, not because he was kicked out. Later that night I checked his record again, only to find that same charge now had a bench warrant active. One of the charges no longer showed up, so I assume one of them was dropped, and the other he was sentenced for. The issue is that I told mother-in-law her boyfriend has an active warrant, and when confronted, boyfriend is lying, saying it's an error. Since I figured he would lie, I found comments on his social media asking him why he ran, how his sentence would just be worse now, and his ex-father-in-law complaining about how bad the judges are, that they believed boyfriend would turn himself in to serve his time. When asked if he knew ex-father-in-law, he said he doesn't know that name. Mother-in-law thankfully called him out, saying he's lying about not knowing ex-father-in-law's name, but was done with the conversation. She asked me to stop looking, and I think she's going to bury her head in the sand. I wouldn't care if we didn't all live together, but our son is here. Am I right to say this is a problem and can't be ignored? Mother-in-law's BFF, who darling husband and I are close with, is telling her that it seems like I'm trying to find a reason to get rid of him. I'm not, and if mother-in-law is happy, that's what matters. Just looking for unbiased opinions and advice. Hellfreezer's note: my advice on this situation is turn the guy in. He's got a warrant, cops are going to come to your house eventually, and that's probably not something your kid needs to see at their age. You could try, be kind and patient, and hope your mother-in-law will eventually come to the conclusion on her own, but I think there has to come a point where her feelings are secondary to everything else. And I think you're fast approaching that point. 2. Backstory. I am no contact with mother-in-law for almost a year now. Wrote about the story earlier on a subreddit. Mother-in-law and father-in-law have been divorced for almost 10 years, and mother-in-law absolutely hates her own father-in-law, my wife's grandfather. Story. My wife was extremely close to her grandfather. He was pretty much the father figure in her life. He was the only one she felt like she could go to for advice or if she was in need of help. Mother-in-law knows this and has repeatedly made it a problem that her daughter loves someone who mother-in-law blames for ruining her life. Mother-in-law was, for whatever reason, asked by father-in-law to inform my wife about her grandfather's unexpected passing. Immediately my wife started freaking out. She couldn't breathe and just kept saying, "You're joking, you have to be joking." Within a minute of informing my wife of the news, mother-in-law got frustrated with the state my wife was in. She asked my wife if she could be put on speakerphone to talk with me. She knows I hate her and want nothing to do with her, but she asked anyway, and it wasn't the time and place to make it an issue. She goes on speakerphone and says this to me: "You need to be there for your wife because there are a lot of complicated things to do with the inheritance, and wife is clearly not in the state to pay attention to it." She then goes on to tell my wife to call her father and talk to no one else until it's all settled, including her grandmother. Then she said bye and hung up. Everything is just so wrong with this. Zero sympathy for my wife, who just lost someone very dear to her. Absolutely not the time and place to bring up someone's estate within a minute of informing someone of their death. She is the divorced wife of one of his sons, and I am the spouse of one of his granddaughters, and neither of us should even be in the conversation about inheritance. I hate her so much. The only person in the world who I can't stomach on a personal level for even a second. There is no way mother-in-law has anything to do with the inheritance, and she would only get something out of it if it was given to her by father-in-law, for whatever reason. Grandfather-in-law hated mother-in-law. We actually bonded over that, and just paid careful attention to his will. He also has 3 other children to look after his estate, besides father-in-law. She's just an awful person who only cares about money. When she was told of grandfather-in-law's death, my guess is that her mind automatically jumped to inheritance, because that's the only thing she cared about when it came to him. She's probably also pissed that it took a solid 10 years after the divorce for him to die. Update. My wife is with my mother-in-law now, and apparently got mad that father-in-law and his side didn't pay for our hotel when we came down for the funeral, and texted father-in-law to repay it for us. I think that goes to show just how money-oriented she is. And how hell-bent she always is on making sure that side of the family pays their fair share. Whatever that means. We never even bothered with asking family if they had a spare room because, we are adults with careers and paying for a night at a hotel isn't a big deal. I'm 23 years old, and today my mother-in-law set me off by trying to help us find a place to live. For a bit of context, I was pregnant at the beginning of the year through the start of February. Long story short, my fiancé, who is 27, and I were staying with his grandmother, love her, for a couple of months. When we found out we were pregnant, we scrambled to find a place to live on our own. We don't necessarily need to live with his grandmother, but we don't mind it most of the time, and it helps us save money to move out of state to a place we actually want to live in the future. Mother-in-law and I have always gotten along decently. She annoyed me a ton during my short-lived pregnancy, and was definitely being a just no. She means well, is never malicious, but fiancé is her only child, so sometimes she can be overwhelming. So of course she stepped in to help us find a place to stay, where we could be near family for at least a year with a newborn. Mother-in-law had a friend who lived out of state but owned a home here, a really nice historic home. We were gonna get a killer deal on rent in exchange for renovating a few things. It was downtown in our town, a great spot for us, 4 bedrooms, fenced-in yard, swing hanging from a great oak in the backyard, fireplace, and a room they were going to let us paint for the baby. It was really too perfect for us. To make a long and tragically annoying story bite-sized, we lost the baby, and at first we were going to still rent out the house and renovate, especially considering that we both really want a family now. Mother-in-law's friend went literally, clinically insane. At first tried to raise the rent on us because the baby died, and then rented it out to another tenant before we moved in, while our belongings were in her home. Oh yeah, and without communicating with us at all, we got all our stuff back and cut that person off, obviously. That's a lot of extra context, but I want you to understand why I really don't want mother-in-law helping us find a house. Today she meets me outside, she lives next door to grandmother, while I'm gardening and she's maniacally scrolling apartments.com. I have 3 stipulations for finding a place after dealing with fiancé's family during and post-pregnancy. 1, within our price range. 2, not in this town, especially considering rent is higher here than surrounding. 3, more than 2 bedrooms because we want to start a family. Every fucking place she showed was none of the 3. All ridiculously overpriced singular bedroom apartments within a 10-minute drive from her house. Fuck all the way off. And then, it's so stupid to be upset over, but she went to the store and asked if I wanted anything to drink. Any juice without orange? What does she get me? Mango orange juice. At this point, she's just trying to piss me off. 4. Just needing to rant where I'll be understood. So, we've been low contact with my mother-in-law for some time now. A little less than a year for a lot of reasons. Mainly her having no respect for me and continuing to cross boundaries and blatantly ignore rules we enforce with my stepson, who is 4 years old. He developed some food issues a bit after turning 2, after her babysitting because all she fed him was junk food. It's taken 2 years to correct, even without her babysitting. She also encouraged him to cuss at her house and taught him curse words, which took a while to remedy as well. She's taken him for haircuts without permission, which he did not want, and he's witnessed verbal arguments while over there between her and her husband. After the last argument he witnessed, I put my foot down and told my fiancé he's not going without supervision. My fiancé agreed, and she's seen him a handful of times in the last year as a result, because our house is too chaotic for her to come visit. Her words. Sunday we had to go out of state to pick up a car for my fiancé. There was no other way around the drive, and my stepson doesn't do well with car rides. So we asked her to watch stepson and our 10-month-old for the 4 hours the trip was supposed to take. Except the meeting place changed last minute, and the trip turned into 5 hours there, 5 hours back. I couldn't let her keep my daughter that long, as she doesn't pay attention to her, and isn't able to keep up with the mobile baby and the 4-year-old at the same time. I figured she could use time to reconnect with her grandson and redeem herself, and maybe could work back up to more frequent visits. I was wrong. The one thing other than he has to eat real food we asked of her was to not let him watch Five Nights at Freddy's. He's obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's, but has never watched it. He loves the characters and the idea of horror, but he's 4. Stuff scares him. It takes months to get him back in his own bed when he's particularly scared of something. And all of his parents, Mom, her fiancé, Dad, and I, decided he needed to be older. We settled on 6, with the possibility of extending that if he wasn't ready, and decided we'd make a big thing of it, all get together and watch it with him. The last visit we'd all had together, she was letting him watch clips before I figured out what they were watching, and I put my foot down and told her no, not even clips. Explained the whole thing to her. We picked him up, he was happy he got to see his Mimi, and we thought all was well. Until this morning, when his mom called me while Dad was at work, she said he was describing movie scenes in detail, stuff she's sure he's never seen at her house, and he said his Mimi let him watch it. I was irate. We had a long phone conversation about it, and my stepson told me the movie scenes he's watched, and also that he didn't tell me or his dad because he didn't want to get in trouble. He knows he was supposed to be older when he watched it, so he didn't want to tell us. I explained that he wasn't in trouble, but his Mimi was because his Mimi knew the rule. I tried to have my partner deal with it. He messaged her and asked if he'd watched it. She messaged back and said, "Only the beginning." Like it wasn't a big deal. She's acting like it's fine, and that she hasn't taken yet another rule and bended it to her will. But I'm putting my foot down this time. She will never watch our kids unsupervised by one of us again. She posted on Facebook about, "My sweet pumpkin thinks he watched Five Nights at Freddy's, but it was clips we already watched." This comes after admitting she let him watch only the beginning. So that's a lie. already trying to save face and make us out to be the mean parents in this scenario when we cut contact again. Hellfreezer's note, I haven't actually seen the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I have seen similar ones like Willy's Wonderland with Nicolas Cage. Don't let a 4-year-old watch that one either. In fact, especially don't let a 4-year-old watch that one, though it is a fun movie. But from what I've seen online, it's rated PG-13. I'm not sure what that would be in the UK, but PG-13 in the US. So Grandma definitely should have known better, and quite frankly, she probably did know better and just didn't care. I think you're fully justified in going no contact, if that's what you ultimately choose to do. And I wish you luck, and you have to put your child first. 5. Context. EM visited with my significant other's little brother, who's 15, for a weekend a few months ago. We went, but EM can be stubborn and stressy, so when we told her that the lunch place was in the city, of which I live in a town outside of, it had to be over-exaggerated and stressful about her driving into the city to this nice place that was in our budget. She has notions that my significant other has to buy her a coffee everywhere we go, at least. It got so bad that my significant other's brother exited the car while it was moving in a multi-story car park. I got out with him and had to console him while walking to the place. We got there and he refused to talk to EM. I ordered him a Coke, and EM took it upon herself to sit away from us while me and my significant other tried to smooth things over with her other son. Safe to say, things since then haven't gotten easier. EM's son has moved out to live with his dad, says he can't take it anymore. EM is recently divorced for similar reasons, but there are, of course, two sides to each story. Before EM would contact my significant other, asking him to act like a surrogate parent, she refuses to speak to their dad, and my significant other lives with me, hours away from him and little brother. Now she uses him as a go-between to pester little brother and speak to her ex. He refuses to. We're supposed to be going on holiday with my family, significant other, EM, and little brother in a few months, yet no one is speaking. We already had issues before with EM wanting a discounted holiday. By that I mean she wants me and significant other to foot half of the bill without having any say in where we would like to go. Have our own schedules, or our own holidays. She dictated our holidays to Cornwall twice. I was stupid and had recently met significant other, who was my boyfriend back then, so I didn't say shit. He has a rare sleep condition, no, I'm not exaggerating, triggered by stress, so after the second time ending and my significant other being in an episode, we decided not to go away with only her and little brother. Little brother's birthday, which fell on one of these past holidays, was domineered by EM. Her idea of vacation is going to the beach every day with everyone. No, not going in the sea, just sunbathing for hours. And if you dare decide to stay back, she will complain and argue, oh, and God forbid, you want to go do something other than that? It took 5 hours of my partner arguing and trying to convince her to let us go kayaking on the last day of the holiday, because going to the beach every day is a non-negotiable. Keep in mind, me and my partner are both adults. She seemed to create arguments between me and him, as she took my spending money for the both of us and used it as her own personal bank for birthday cards, family in Cornwall, and he let her. She tried booking Greece with us in a few months, and after uncovering the fact that she only wanted us to come to essentially finance half of the trip, with no say, basically the past 2 times, me and my partner put our feet down and said we would rather finance our own trip on our own terms. That was the case until my own family stepped in and made it an integrated holiday with EM because of EM's situation with not having little brother and complaining about paying child support. They are only expecting the cost of her flight and half of little brother's flight as a contribution. After my family decided to invite EM and little brother, I have warned them of all these issues, but they insist time will heal all. They are both boomers and the only reason we can afford a foreign holiday. Very grateful for, by the way. She is coming in a few days for a Mother's Day meal with my partner and my mother. Partner was dumb and forgot to book an Italian restaurant, so I spent my morning trying to find a place that could take us. That was nice and fit with the Mother's Day theme. And wasn't pricey, and ideally had offers on. I found and booked a reservation and told my partner, who then told EM. She immediately objected to the place I picked like the last time, when we were with little brother, and I said to my partner I wouldn't be cancelling the reservation over my dead body. Her suggestion was a pricey restaurant in the middle of the city that is rammed, only has a reservation for 12, and wouldn't be justifiably affordable for me, my partner, my mom, and even EM herself. She probably expected my partner and I to pay for her meal again. She asked to speak to me about planning my partner's birthday, which I'm dreading. Update. She texted my partner that she wanted to plan a road trip for his birthday. He wasn't in favor of the idea. It's a lot of hassle. She suggested getting together to talk at the weekend at a lovely pub. The lovely pub she is referring to is my birthday party where I got engaged to my partner. It was paid for by my grandparents in the upper end of my city, aka pricey. Any tips or tricks? Trying not to snap at her. Haven't so far. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parents, IPOP, episode 125. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. It lets YouTube know you enjoyed the video and encourages them to recommend it to others. If you'd like to support the channel and me and help me keep doing this as long as I can, you can support me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You can do that for as little as $1 or more a month, and in return you get early access to the videos on Monday. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring. And if you'd like to leave a tip, you can click on the little heart under the video with a $sign in the middle. But you don't have to do that, although it is very much appreciated and helps a lot. Okay, I don't think we've any other business today, I don't think we've any shout-outs, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: how many of you have bought fancy water bottles? You know, the kind that are insulated to keep things hot and cold. I know every now and again there's a craze that goes around for a specific brand. I can't remember the thing recently, but it was a name, but it was also a name of something else, so I was always a bit confused. I've got a few in the kitchen. They weren't cheap, but they do need a bit of a clean, so that's why I've not thrown them out. It's like, no, they're very expensive. I will use them again. I just need to properly sterilize them before I use them again. And I'll probably do that closer to the summer when I want to have some nice ice-cold water on hand at all times. So why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from IPOP, episode 124. And this was in relation to something you think is a good idea, but you don't really bother with it. And today's answer comes from Purple Dragonfly. I always want to meal prep. I feel like having snacks and meals ready would help me, but I can never remember to do it, or I don't have the items for meal prepping. Well, I agree, I've also thought about meal prepping as well. It seems sensible, but I just never do it. Thank you very much for your answer, Purple Dragonfly. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.